now provides a leadership to give certainty to citizens. And at this moment, we are in a state of doubt, you know, a state of crisis of confidence, 3 years, 5 years. Exactly. I mean, you know, all of these instances of, you know, corruption, you know, issues, scandals surrounding the government. So there's sort of doubt. I mean, do people really trust this government?
That's it. We'll get into that. But first, let's just look at this clip about Barrow, how Barrow sees the whole thing, his summary of it, of his achievements. Let's just take a look at this clip.
Multi-million projects, especially in very deprived areas, from Banjul to URR, attest to this. The economic support, including the budget support from the international community, the 50% salary increase for workers across all cadres of the public service, the 100% pay increase for pensioners, the cash support to needy families, and the availability and affordability of food throughout the country have reached directly or indirectly all citizens in the country. The provision of social amenities with increased and steady supply of electricity and water has made social life amicable for all. The appearance of all and new political parties to partake in the very cordial political climate reflects the new Gambia in progress. The new Gambia is in progress. Through the TRRC, victims and bereaved families are coming to terms with their plight or the loss of their loved ones, and offenders are reconciling with their victims and themselves. The effect of democracy, good governance, and the economic situation brought about by my government has penetrated the entire Gambian society and has reached every community, every institution, every organization, every citizen, and every resident in the country.
So we've just got his own take on his own performance. Your response to that?
I'm basically wondering whether Barrow is referring to this Gambia that we are living, that people have access to affordable food supply. People are getting hungry, and hungry each day in this country. I don't think the food is the price of food is decreasing. I don't think that. So sometimes I don't think it's necessary. What I was expecting was to see him speak. You know, addressing the nation doesn't mean like you just have to paint a nice picture for the government. Come and tell us the challenges, the real challenges that the government is facing. People want to hear that. People want to know what is happening. People want to know, you know, like Madi mentioned, like we are uncertain. Even a very recent survey shows that one of the problems that Gambia is facing is political uncertainty. And then people have saying that they are politically uncertain. And now you're telling us that this is this beautiful picture that we currently live in. I'm not living that.
Okay, so let's get into the details. Because with he had what, 21 themes covering all sectors. The very first one he said, because it was the most important, he said, call it economy. But according to his address, what is the economy doing? There's a growth, 6.5% 2018, up from 4.8 2017. The dollar is stable. The revenue and grants 9.8%, you know, up from 8.6. So he's giving us some positive indicators there that the economy is doing well.
Yeah. You see, stability doesn't mean necessarily well-being. You know, I'm just trying to think of a scenario. I mean, you are in the middle of the ocean. I mean, you know, the oars are lost, but the boat is floating stably. It doesn't mean you are, you know, your engine is not working. It doesn't mean you are safe. You know, but there is stability. The waves, I mean, there are no waves, I mean, agitating the boat. And the boat is just that now you are out of oars. Yeah, where are the oars? Where is the engine, for example, if it is the engine? So this is the point, as you know, as Sid was saying. You wonder, is this the Gambia is talking about? And, you know, and again, all of these successes he's talking about, say, the economy. He said three things in the accounting for this stability and this progress he's reporting. That we've seen foreign direct investment increase, or ODA particularly, aid increase. We've seen tourism increase and remittances. You know, so these are three things he attributed the current economic status to. But you see, again, this doesn't necessarily reflect the efforts of your government. This reflects the situation we are in, coming out of dictatorship that has severely strangulated the tourism, that has severely, mismanaged ODA. I mean, a lot of the folks that are coming in were not coming or here to that extent because of the dictatorship. So naturally, out of the dictatorship, we've seen a lot of international goodwill come. So these are natural effects of what happened in 2016.
But again, given what we say, that the amount of damage that was done, should we have expected to see anything differently? Should we have expected things to be different from what they are right now?
Yeah, certainly. So that by now, the huge amount of international goodwill that have come, if this government is showing efficiency, effectiveness, we would have seen a huge transformation of the economy at this moment beyond what he is reporting.
I mean, we constantly saying here that the government economy collapsed. When you look at our civil service, really nothing was going on there. All talent had to run. So he had to put in yes men there. So the whole structure is rotten to the core. So why should we expect anything better? At least he's making these modest improvements in certain areas.
Well, I'll take in answering your question, I'll just take the issue of young people, for instance. And in the speech, he mentioned like they're doing efforts to address issues around youth and employment. But I'll give the figures. 65% of the population here are young people. And out of that, 40% of those, based on figures, 40% of those are unemployed. And for me, I am not into all this, numbering of economic progress. I want to feel it in my pocket. And everybody wants to feel the economy along those lines. They want to see that their well-being is different from where they're coming from. They want to see all this, they want to see that. And right now you see in this country, with the political uncertainty, the issue of the economy is very central to our politics, and the government hasn't done much to address those issues. You see the cases of Faraba, what is happening in Gunju. These are all related to the economy, and these are more socio-economic issues that they have to address. But it's still lip service.
What should they have done with the economy, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, I think given where we come from and their own acknowledgement at the very beginning in 2017 that they found nothing in the coffers and, and all of the mismanagement that was around, what you needed at that very moment is discipline. How do you cut costs? And how do you raise savings, all right? And of course, even looking at what investments you make, in order to generate, more revenue, through employment, that is, and other sectors of the economy. So that what they should have done, therefore, was first and foremost to severely cut costs.
But they will tell you that they've cut costs. Last year it was 11.5, this year 10%.
Yeah,
cut some costs.
Which is hugely inadequate because they reported it. 27 or 18 April when the environment minister went to the parliament, talked about 300 million spent on foreign travels alone. Yeah. Barrow himself, can you imagine claiming that is pittance? Spending 4 million, what is that? So I think that was a huge failure, and you can see ultimately they did not cut costs in terms of that foreign travels a role, not to mention procurement, say vehicles, maintenance of vehicles, opening of embassies, and then widespread employment of people like advisors. What is the point of appointing up to 6 or probably more advisors to the president, and what is the value of these advisors to the president? So in many ways, whilst they claim cutting costs, one could visibly see activities, engagements that actually incur cost. So ultimately, they did not help the economy. And again, I think one also looks at the loan issue. The number of loans that they have engaged in, you look at the value of those loans. So that I think probably one of the things they could have done very early, in terms of legal reforms as regards public finance, is that you put a ceiling as to how much loan can you take, and even determine at this particular moment what kind of loans should we have.
That's it. And we've heard from them over the weeks, actually, or months, that because of our indebtedness, So whatever gains the economy registers, we have to go back to finance this debt. It was quite interesting because then you cannot spend on social welfare and other areas where you should spend, then you really don't have the money for it.
Yeah, I think also we focus, most of our income comes from taxation, and if we're talking about New Gambia, I also think that there's a need to move beyond taxation. Like, we have an 80-kilometer coastline, with the Atlantic Ocean you talk about. We have a river that cuts through. Half of it, is freshwater, and you have, like a big space of land where, people, agriculture and all those products can take place. But when we continue to adopt this, what we call beggar foreign policy, and also, we continue to take loans, and sometimes when these loans come, you see it doesn't go in much into the productive sector of the economy. So I think we need to move beyond these loans also and this taxation to expand on exploiting our own resources for our own good. And I think the government needs to start thinking along those lines and investing in those things.
That's it. And it's also with the private sector, because we all know that you really need the private sector, given how things are, to help. And with this PPP, here we've got one of his legislative frameworks, he said, so they're planning on putting in a PPP bill, public-private partnership bill. So what do you think of that? Perhaps they should have engaged private sector even more vigorously within the economy.
Yeah. So certainly they should engage the private sector. And one of the ways to do that is, I think, the president needs to engage the chamber so that they constitute what I would call a business council. That is, you have business executives constitute into a body that would quarterly or periodically anyhow would sit with the president as Gambian businesses engage in the Gambian economy to provide advice, because these are the people in practice on the ground. You can have your central bank, you can have your GAIPA and Minister of Trade and Finance, officials to sit and discuss the economy and create policy. But there are others also, like the private sector, who are in the business. And so how do you tap into that? All of this goes to show the immense opportunities, resources available to the president of a republic, to make the right decisions if you do the right engagement. So that even this PPP, look, people got to be, to understand these things, that PPP doesn't necessarily mean success. We have a lot of experiences around Africa and outside, in Central America, South America, where PPPs sometimes increases cost price, cost inefficiency, cost shortage, and service delivery, and is poor. So it's not necessarily PPP just moves on. So it's a good idea.
But we got something similar. The National Business Council, it's got these ministries, they're all part of it, but again, 5 members of the private sector. That's the National Business Council.
Yeah, I think that council is at the level of Minister of Trade. And I know not just today, but even in the former government, there is an economic forum that the government and the chamber sort of organize. At least it was done once, all right? But I'm not sure there is a functional business council, particularly at the level of the presidency, as a mechanism to provide advice, guidance, information, analysis to the president on the economic issues, concerns, opportunities and challenges that are in the Gambia.
I'm saying, Mati, your views there, the PPP, and they've said also the state-owned enterprises and taxation bills, all this that are lined up to deal with our issues now.
Of course, we want to see more government and private sector partnership, because right now the way we're looking at, and if you're looking at all the issues, the problems that we confronted, you realize that it is not only government that can adequately address those issues. So therefore, you need the private sector to get in. But I also think also for public-private sector engagement, there is also that need for the legal framework or to be expanded so that issues around taxation, issues around wages, these are issues or socio-economic issues that are also of concern to the public, also to be part of those discussions as to see how best we can address all those different challenges. So I think it is a welcome development. I'm not so afraid to what extent they have gone, but I think it is a welcome development, and we hope to see more from what's going to come out of it.
That's it. So let's move on to our next theme, education. That's right up your turf. What do you think of this 65% STEM turnaround policy? It was quite interesting, because with us, whenever we follow the yearly graduation from the university, you'll have vast numbers graduating in law or in the arts and the humanities, but not comparably when it comes to STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Not that many. So, but this 65% turnaround policy, quite interesting, isn't it? You think they have a course?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think our science field and STEM in general is very underdeveloped in this country. Yes, there's a 65% turnaround in terms of government sponsorship, which is, if you look at it, some will say it is a bit discriminatory, but at some point government needs to take policy looking at the real issues and direct those policies towards that. But you realize that, okay, there's STEM, there's 65%, but what exactly are we producing and what exactly are we getting? When you talk, I'll take the university for instance. Our students in the sciences maybe do not even have adequate labs or even labs to practice. So basically, most of the things we do is basically on theory. So yes, it is important to provide scholarship, but it's also important to provide the learning environment so that it will not only stop at the scholarship, but then that money that is spent on scholarship will be beneficial to the public when labs are there, when people can start doing their own research and all those issues. And so since there is 65%, I also hope that it will correspond in establishing labs and other learning facilities that will enable students in STEM particular to do whatever they want to do.
That's it. Mandy, following on from there, so that's it. They've got this policy, and yet the reality on the ground doesn't quite support it to make it a reality soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a matter that has been talked about in the Gambia for the past probably 10 years in a more serious way. That's why we even have a higher education, ministry, science and technology. And there's no argument about that, that ultimately the future of nations, that is nations that will be able to address the needs and aspirations of their people, will depend on nations that have mastered, that are strong in science and technology, because only science and technology gives you the ability to industrialize, gives you the ability to transform your raw materials into finished products. So ultimately, science and technology go to the heart of the matter of our development.
But if students do not sign up to it, I wonder, what's your experience? Perhaps most students sort of shy away from it. One wonders, what is it? Is it a question of money? Students cannot afford to do the science subjects, or is it a matter of most people perhaps prefer the arts and humanities than the sciences? I wonder what's your experience at the university.
I think it's a lot of mixtures, but I also think in terms of, because at the higher education level, it is the basic education that feeds into the higher education level, and I don't think here also people tend to understand there's these issues around counseling where people know what exactly they want to follow and the like. Those are all some of the challenges. But also when you look at it in terms of maths in particular, the failure in maths is very high, and people also believe that it is only people that study science can also do that. So I think those are all part of the challenges. But I think in terms of the delivery from the basic education going up, that also needs to be looked at. The quality of education is definitely going down, and I think it's not definitely helping inspire students, young ones, to get into the sciences. But also the lack of resources, the lack of learning facilities. If you want to do biology, for instance, and you go spend 4 years and you have never do any practical, for instance, if students hear that, they might not want to come because it's not there.
You've said that education generally is plummeting, is going down, yet WAS results last time much better than what we had last year. So there was some improvement, wouldn't you concede?
Well, improvement in what? In terms of number of students that graduate with good grades. But yes, if few students, maybe about 10%, what happened to the 90%? So for me, I don't just look at certain figures. I look at the whole picture and see what the real issue is. And I think that's where the focus needs to be.
Okay. And Maddie, here we were told that early childhood, when it comes to enrollment, and early childhood going up, lower basic, upper basic, senior secondary, numbers are going up. Students are going more and more in there, going to school, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are programs, all of the things the president said that have been happening in this country, you know, in the past years. But ultimately, when you look at the big picture, when you look at the outputs, particularly the outcomes, fundamentally, it hasn't transformed the country, you know, into any enviable position. And now the task is for this government, and going forward for any government that would come in this country, is how do we strategically ensure that all of these interventions transform. You know, for example, until now, I mean, you talk to many Gambians, even workmen, to fix your camera or to fix your plumbing or so. They will tell you the skills in the Gambia are not either enough or not, you know, they are not qualified enough. I mean, that you would have to rely on probably, you know, Senegalese or the other Gambians. And that reminds me of listening to a technology giant in America, CEO, who made the point, probably Bill Gates or Steve Jobs himself, I can't remember, a few years ago, that he would rather put a plant in China than in the U.S. because there are more skillful hands in China than in the U.S.
But perhaps that's the reason why they've talked about this curriculum review, isn't it? Where they can introduce ICT, plumbing, plastic works, and all of these things.
Yeah.
I mean, Said Martin, I've heard economists use this term, the lag effect. Maybe there are certain initiatives that have already been introduced, but perhaps it will take time for it to come to fruition. What do you make of that? Because for some people, maybe they tell you that it's a bit unfair, given 3 years and the amount of damage. Perhaps you're expecting a miracle recovery. What do you say to that?
I'm still trying to figure out, you know, this damage that we keep talking about, to what extent this damage is. I think our institutions were still intact, even though they were very weak.
The personnel.
Yeah. In terms of the personnel, it's no longer the institution, but in the one that has the power and the kind of people he appoints to lead certain positions. I think those are sometimes the issues that we raise. But yes, development takes time. It doesn't come just like that. It has to take time, it has to germinate, it has to grow, you know, work, whatever, it has to do that. But along the process, it's also, because development is for the people, so the people also need to be part of that process, and therefore they need to participate, but not only participate, but they also their expectations as to what will come out of that needs to be also managed. And so far, with all the damages that people keep talking about, one thing that this government haven't done well is managing people's expectation. And so far, that's where some of these problems that we're talking about
you know that expectations will always be far higher than what reality can deliver.
Yeah, and that's why I said also that the government needs to come tell people what they're telling, not just to you know, create this fancy picture and say that this is Gambia. We live here, we know what is here.
Madi, what are your views on that?
Yeah, I think ultimately education is the foundation. And I think when you look at all the countries that we claim are called to be advanced countries, you would see very early how they have invested in education, made education accessible, almost free. You know, many folks will be surprised that those countries of Western Europe, for example, that are so developed, you know, from Sweden all the way down, have practically made education a right that is, you know, available to all. And that is the reason why these societies have been able to transform. And education, not just, you know, generally, but particularly when you talk about science and technology. Until today, you would hear the leaders of France, of UK, of Germany, of United States, of Canada, talking about still more investment in science and technology, because they realize science and technology is culture, you know, and so it's unlimited. It is still growing. So if countries like Canada or the US or Germany are worried about, you know, the state of science and technology, you know, of their labs in the universities, they need to invest in that more and develop to grow. You wonder what our countries at the Gambia thinking or waiting for. And again, like this issue, you know, that you raised with Said, you know, it is not that people in Germany love science and technology or mathematics. The way Gambians respond to mathematics, you still find that, I mean, it's the same thing. You know, but you have to put more than the necessary investment, but the necessary motivation, you know, incentives for our students to want to do go into this area. And how do we also build this to start from the very early stage, early childhood development in our kindergartens, in our, you know, those nursery schools? How do we create a culture of, you know, love for science and technology, love for mathematics, so they grow up with it to primary school, to secondary school, and so on? You see, and our problem has been that, you know, that we don't go to the roots. We always start from the branches, and you cannot grow the tree from the branches.
So, but here, said here, you are the political scientist. This relationship between democracy and economic development. We've constantly been told that with democracy, economic development is always slow, incremental. I think there was reasons why I once heard Lee Kuan Yew, we are so fond of quoting now, citing Singapore, what happened, and said, if you want rapid economic growth, that goes with less democracy. What do you make of that?
That's I want to see, like Madi has been given good example as to most European countries. I think economic growth, even though it goes with democracy, and in some places they, like you mentioned, Singapore, where they decided to have a one-party state, and from there they impose a kind of economic paradigm. Of course, I think, for me, I think democracy and economic growth can go at the same time, because democracy is about participation, and economic growth also includes participation. People need to participate in the process, needs to participate in a free environment. But yes, you can impose economic growth and all those issues through a dictatorship. At the end of the day, if people do not have that freedom, that might be meaningless to me.
That's a debate, I suppose, that will be ongoing. Let's move on to health. Here we are told that they want what? Universal health coverage, I think, by 2030. How realistic is that?
Certainly, by the rate we are going, and, you know, rate here, not just in terms of speed and volume, but in terms of the ideas, you know, that float around, the other orientation as, you know, Gambians, of course, as technocrats, as policymakers, I do not think that would happen. We've had these targets, you know, since independence, not just in the Gambia, but in many other parts of Africa. You know, by this year we'll conquer hunger, by this year we'll ensure free universal healthcare, and so on and so forth. But there are certain social services, I believe, if you don't conquer them, you cannot obtain the necessary human development, you know, the necessary development overall that, you know, you require, you know. So, of course, health is one of them. Food is one of them. Education is one of them. These are areas of the economy that we have to make, you know, we have to conquer. That is, make sure health delivery, healthcare is available to all, accessible to all, affordable to all. And this is possible. I mean, I'm sure if one claims free healthcare, people jump through the roof to think, I mean, how could that be? But yes, because ultimately nothing is free in life. And the Gambia can make sure that it's free healthcare, that provided we can reorganize, better manage the resources that we have. And we have enough of those resources, opportunities, to make sure we ensure that there is social service. Because giving free health care, what most of us don't also realize is it creates not more benefits, and benefits in terms of raising revenue, in terms of increasing productivity, and eventually in terms of reducing the cost of morbidity generally.
Yes, but I wonder, say Martin, let's contextualize it within Africa. Is there anywhere or which countries are doing better when it comes to providing health care for their citizens? There's none around, it seems. What is this continental malaise, if one can call it that?
Well, I am not afraid with the African picture, but I am afraid with the Gambia.
And the reason why I ask is that really for us to really situate ourselves within the broader context, it is important to have this comparison so that we wouldn't inflate or underrate anything.
Of course, I think health is a concern to everyone, and I will give an example here in Gambia with the Afrobarometer survey. We saw that health, most Gambians identify health as one of the issues that they want government to address, and since that they say they have a plan for universal health care, I think that will be important to understand that people are demanding for health services. Of course, if you look at the Afrobarometer, perhaps we'll be able to look at that, but health continues to be a concern around Africa, and people will always say health is a priority, and is of course a priority to any nation.
Absolutely, and for me, one of the encouraging things I heard in the speech was this mental health bill, because we know here that for a very long time, be it socially or whatever, we've never really given due care, appropriate care to people with mental health.
Yeah, long overdue, and indeed painful in the way we engage mental health. You just have to go to Tanka and see the squalor, the neglect of not just the premises, but the poverty of the services, of the facilities, and the limited care of the inmates in that facility. So yes, we need a mental health law to ensure that adequate attention is given to that area. But in addition, because these things should not be done in isolation, we need a disability law as well, so that when you look at it, we have a disability bill for the past 10 years and government unable to address that. So these are all things that we need to look at, and and health, because they all constitute in the bigger picture the state of health of the country, and we need to think eventually, how do we ensure health financing? In Africa, you raised the question. In Africa, I think the information I've got, I think that's available, probably it's only Rwanda that I understand has a definite, state health program, providing coverage for more than 60% of the population. But let's compare these things to countries in the West, for example. The NHS in the UK.
But is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, it's a fair comparison.
Given the relative difference in our economy,
we're not looking. We're not looking at the UK like the NHS in terms of today. We're looking at the history. Where did they start, and why did they start? How did they start? In the 40s,
after the Second World War.
Right. In the vast majority of the British, we are also poor people. Social service, particularly health, was expensive. Was for those who have money are able to get it. But they had the wisdom to realize that, look, until we have a national health program, so that nobody is sick, unable to find attention just because you are poor, you cannot afford it, then the country will remain sick.
That's it. But then,
I think that is where we are today.
That's it. But then, don't you think they had the economy, really, even though the economy had just gone through a knock because of the Second World War, while yet the institutions, the structures were strong enough to support something like that? Because here we're always complaining about weak institutions, weak structures, weak, all of that. What do you think?
I think the denominator here is the health and well-being of the people. It doesn't matter whether you're a big economy or small economy. What is important is like you have programs and agendas that addresses this concern. And I don't think Gambia is that poor that we cannot take care of our health. I feel it's more like maybe we are short-sighted, or we're not thinking bigger. I think that must be the reason. But it's not in terms of like these are big economies and these are small economies. People are people. Well, it doesn't matter. Health is health. So it needs to be invested. There are people that afford, that are richer. They go to private clinics. There are people that cannot even afford public health service, which is free, and then after you go buy medicine. So there needs to be those issues to be addressed, but not to compare whether this one is rich and this one is poor. Health is health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And perhaps something else before you come in. When we pass these bills, these laws, then we have to enforce. Let's take tobacco. We were just talking about health. I mean, they had the Tobacco Control Act or something like that.
Yeah.
I think, was it the
Public
first week or so,
smoking,
public smoking? Was it the first, few months or something? Now nobody enforces anything. So that is also a shortcoming of our whole systems. We will write things down beautifully, but to enforce them, there's a problem.
So, and these are all subjects that should reflect in the state of the nation. Because the state of the nation is the fact that when you talk about enforcement, the application of the rule of law, by the state, public institutions is weak. And so long as we disregard the rule of law or we don't enforce laws, then compliance is a problem. And where people generally don't comply with the law, that's abuse. So that if you look at the Gambia, just stand at the traffic light and just see how motorist citizens will just pass. And, why? That's rule of law. The traffic light is a rule of law.
Course,
Red says stop, green says go. Wait. But when you have the state itself failing to apply the rule of law, disregarding the rule of law, ultimately it seeps down to the ordinary citizenry, so that ultimately there is abuse, widespread culture of abuse of the rule of law. And that is a major concern for which I think in remaking the Gambia, because this was the culture coming out of that dictatorship, that I would have expected that the president talks to Gambians, look, ultimately this country, all of us should make it. And yes, the president has to enforce the law, the IGP has to enforce the law, and so on and so forth. But you also have a duty to uphold the law. When the traffic red light says red, stop. It says green, then you go.
But hasn't he been upholding the law, our president?
Well, so this is it. So if you've not been upholding the law, you'll find it difficult, therefore, to speak to citizens to uphold the law. So, I mean, therefore, this mental health law or, many other laws that are in place, and, not just those laws, but even the budget, because equally when you get the government, get the budget approved by the National Assembly, the budget has to be executed. And that is, how do you now spend public money, to make sure it buys the goods and services to deliver to citizens, as you've stated in the budget. So all of those weaknesses that we face, for which I think the State of the Nation address the president should have recognized all of these are big challenges in the country, coming from our history, our experience. Not just in the past 22 years, but probably from independence. And this is the time now to remake the Gambia. This is the kind of message I would have loved to see our president talk about, to highlight those instances in the Gambia where excellence was demonstrated.
Absolutely.
And to reinforce those ones, and to speak against where abuses have taken place. I mean, within the government, I mean, outside of the government. So that, you speak to people things that, we all share, we all see, we all feel.
That's it. I mean, talking about law, wasn't it, we were promised, wasn't it last year during the State of the Nation address, that there would be anti-corruption bill, which I think to most Gambians that would be highly significant, very important. So, but this year we are told that by December they will table an anti-corruption bill before Parliament. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's a highly welcome development, and it is long overdue for us to have an anti-corruption commission, because corruption has become one of the biggest issues, challenges confronting this country, and it is from all facets of life, from the office of the president down to maybe I have the last office in country, so down to my office. So you see, so to have an anti-corruption commission is highly welcome. But I'm also kind of, because I remember in 2012 there was already an act. I'm not sure how far is it that they're going to repeal that act to have a new one. But I'll be interested. It will be interesting for to know about it, because for me there was a time it was announced here, and now they're coming up with a new bill. But generally we want to see an anti-corruption. But we don't want to see an anti-corruption bill that will only focus on certain individuals and then leave. It must be cross-cutting. It must be national. It must follow the rule of law, like Madi stated, and as simple as that. And we don't want it to just be a backing bulldog.
Yes, and with us journalists, the draconian media laws, they're still there. One would have thought that perhaps this would have been repealed, but they're still there.
Yeah. So you see, the Anti-Corruption Commission bill that he mentioned and these media laws, all the more point to the fact that this State of the Nation address should have come, in fact, in January. All right? Before the Parliament would sit in their first sitting sometime in March, you know, so that when you listen to the address, he said the anti-corruption bill will come in December, but he mentioned a number of other bills that he did not give a date, a timeline. He said, you know, this will come, a particular government department is working on it, this will come before you. When? I understand. So that what this means is the State of the Nation address should have come earlier, so that we know by December we would have had these bills addressed, I mean, so that we have these laws in place. And so one wonders, is 2019, why were these draconian media laws not repealed or reformed, you know, in 2017 or 2018 until now, end of 2019?
That will be interesting. We should have this government representative here to come and answer that. But said Matthew, I tried doing something the other day. Went back to the 2017 premises, State of the Nation address, and then to try to see how much of what was said, what was promised, how much of it was achieved. And then it was quite interesting. They talked about new Labour Act, new Labour laws, and all the rest of it. But one wonders whether they've actually these bills have been tabled in Parliament and whether they're acts now.
Yeah. I was reading the 2019 State of the Nation address. I was looking forward to that Labour Act that you were talking about. Here, there is no the labour law in this country is very old. People have been exploited anyhow, and so I was looking forward to seeing that, but it has not been mentioned in the State of the Nation address. I don't know whether it has been forgotten for something else, but I think we need that issue. We need the labor law to be revised, and even a minimum wage to be included, because people are exploited in this country anyhow.
Yeah, you're right. I think we'll probably have to move on now. Let's move on to agriculture. It's quite very significant, you know, in our economy. And we are told that 22% of GDP is agriculture. And yet, the driving force, as he said, of this growth, agriculture was in one of it. It was the remittances and all the rest of it. Your views on that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have huge opportunities for agriculture. And again, this is one indispensable factor, ingredient, on which the development of the country rests. And we've seen this in every society, that you are able to produce food, enough food, and then transform that food further, I mean, that produce into finished products. And, you know, so it's about how do we transform or empower subsistence farmers. How do we raise commercial farming, you know, mechanized farming?
Yes, but that was really one of the themes. He said that was the approach.
You know, again, you realize this was talked about since the 2017 State of the Nation address, and even before, previous governments have said it. All right, I mean, Jamaica had this outrageous thing called Operation Feed
the Nation.
Feed the Nation. I mean, 2016 was
grow. Was it grow what you eat?
Yeah, grow what you eat slogans. I mean, 2016 said no more importation of rice. You know, but I mean, when you remove all the political rhetoric down there, you realize there's no real commitment to it. I mean, how are we dealing with, for example, storage? You know, when our farmers produce, you wait until it is time for watermelon. In this country, you see, you know, groups of watermelon sellers all over the place. When the time comes for oranges, you see orange sellers all over the place. When it is time for mangoes, you see mangoes all over the place. Then you want juice, Gambian mango juice, you go to the supermarket, you know, or melon juice, you know. So how do we now create a situation where we have processing plants, you know, because that is what will also transform our farmers from being poor farmers to become rich farmers.
But would that come from government, or they would try to encourage private sector? How would that work?
Yeah, multiple ways. Certainly, there needs to be a lot of state investment in it. All right. You know, but there will be, of course, a private sector engagement. We need to encourage our private sector to go into commercial farming, create the incentives. I'd rather give incentives to Gambian private sector, you know, tax concessions and access to land and other things, than to bring, say, a Chinese company, fish meal company, you know, to come on the beach and set up to capture, to catch our fish, and so on. So let us not just talk about it as government, but let them really put action to their words. Let them be committed to their words, so that in practice we would see Gambian private sector get into actual, full-scale farming. You know, but also the little smallholder farmers, the subsistence farmers in our villages and towns. How do we make sure their produce, groundnuts and other things that are, horticulture, how do we help them?
Exactly. St. Matthew, there's an idea, the whole concept of indigenization. It seems as if Gambia is much more open. When I read about other African countries, they've got their own indigenization structures. So anybody who wants to come in, you have to partner with a native of the country, or maybe even give them 40% or stuff like that. We do not have any such thing. So it seems that our private sector, in many ways, because if you want to compete with people from outside, our private sector would probably be disadvantaged in this. But I'm just told that we need to take a short break. Just hold that thought. We'll be back shortly.
Why wouldn't you? When you get to enjoy a massive 50% reduction on your pay-as-you-go data tariff. You know you get to enjoy such amazing discounts with QCell's fantastic network. Enjoy our reduced pay-as-you-go data tariff every day from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. No subscription, no validity period. Simply recharge your account and off you go. QCell, the Gambia's quality network.
Light. From the beginning of time, light has been there.
It is integral to our survival and to our way of living.
We need light to work,
To build.
to grow things, and even to see our loved ones.
Light makes things easier and better.
So QCell has changed the way you buy Q-Power to make it easier and more accessible.
You can now access the same service quickly and get your cash power tokens instantly with the new QCell Q-Power code.
To light up your world, simply dial *363#.
With the touch of your fingers,
With ease and convenience from the comfort of your home or office,
you can bring light into your world instantly with *363#.
Q-Power, lighting your world.
QCell Sunyabus.
We innovate, others follow.
It is the new era in broadcasting. We showed it to you with our continuously improving content. With thousands of viewers around the world, now, how do you take advantage of our existing and constantly increasing viewership? Advertise with QTV and reach a large audience. Call us on 3244 or email marketing@qtv.gm. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. QTV Gambia. QTV, a new era in broadcasting.
Welcome back to this QTV special program on the State of the Nation address given by the President on Thursday. I'm joined here today by two distinguished guests, Said Matejau, Professor of Political Science and Coordinator of Afrobarometer, and Madu Jabate, who is the country rep of the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. Just before the break, Said Matejau, we were talking about indigenization and how really if everything is just so open particularly I hear people say about, especially with land, maybe we'll come to land afterwards, we were just so easy. Anybody could just come and buy land freely. I hope that we are not sowing any trouble for the future, because sooner or later Gambians will start reacting. What do you make of that?
Yeah, of course, like you stated, if there are no policies around indigenization trying to even pushing towards creating the enabling environment for local business and local participants, and you just open it, other people with more money will definitely come, and when they come, they'll take over. It's not about saying we don't want other businesses to come, but the issue of partnership. It's also because doing business is also part of creating that capacity for your own country and for the issues of sustainability as well, and so. So far, I don't know any policy around indigenization, but I think it is important to consider, especially when it comes to certain sectors. Yeah, I think it's something that needs to be considered. Yeah.
Absolutely. So in the context of, we were talking about agriculture here. Yeah. Yes. So what do you make of this indigenization thing? And also the government tends to make much of this, what they call the rice value chain in Sapo. What do you make of that? And we are told that they've bought all sorts of machines, tractors, transplanters, and milling machines. What do you make of that?
The amazing thing is there is a lot of investment in agriculture in the Gambia. That is in terms of the loans and grants that go into agriculture. They have all sorts of projects, but ultimately food security, food self-sufficiency remains a huge challenge. And so that, in the context of the private sector, especially indigenization, I think government needs to put a lot more commitment to it than it talks. And I think, we have the opportunity, really, to start from low scale and grow up with it. And low scale, I mean, how do we support our, smallholder farmers, in the villages and towns, as I was saying. But also, how do we introduce, create the necessary incentives, to Gambian businesses to encourage them. But beyond that, why can the government, in fact, consider creating a necessary state enterprises purposely to go into agriculture, as they have created Gamtel in terms of telephone and telephony services, as they've created other enterprises. I mean, Gamcell came as a result of that. That is given primarily the state of affairs. That is also how many Gambian private sectors, indigenous Gambian private sectors, players exist, and to what extent, in terms of how much capital do they have to be able to make transformation in these areas. So I think all of these are areas that they need to consider. So that we can transform our agriculture to something meaningful.
How would you respond to it?
Yeah, of course. I'll take, for instance, women farmers, for instance. Most of the food that we consume here, 60%, statistics will say it is consumed by women, and yet they are the poorest, because there is less investment, less capital engage in that, and I think the environment for that needs to be created. There needs to be more support to especially women farmers, because if they're the ones producing almost 60% of the food that we consume, supporting them will continue to strengthen that. But also creating that enabling environment for businesses outside to partner. Madi did talk about the issues around storage. These are all critical elements when it comes to the idea of indigenization, because also having the enabling environment will enable them to produce, especially for people to consume.
Absolutely. I'm sure the debate will reach on. I think we should move on to another theme now. Energy. Energy is really very, very, very important. But when I look around, especially in my neighborhood, I have to say that the electricity supply now from Narek has improved.
Of course, yeah.
What do you
I totally agree. I totally agree. When we were doing the Afrobarometer, I thought people were going to identify electricity as one of their main challenges. But you realize that electricity was not counted due to the fact that there have been quite a stable electricity, especially in the urban centers. So yeah, there's definitely improvement in terms of service delivery on electricity.
Yeah, I think the improvement, though, should not make us, relax. And we need to ask issues around it. What is the cost, of this electricity? How sustainable it is? So that we know we are getting electricity from the Turkish company, Car Power. How much are we paying? And for how long will this continue? We know we're getting electricity from Senegal. How long will this continue? How much are we paying? The electricity we use at Kotu is from generators, fossil fuel. I mean, how sustainable is this? That place already been encroached by, residents. So in the future, going forward, where would be the sources of our energy? What would be the cost? Are we? I know NAWEC, the ministry are talking about renewable energy, but I mean, how much? I mean, how far are we engaged in this to make sure we secure our energy interest, which is a national security issue as well. So yes, we may be satisfied with the delivery of electricity at this moment, but there are bigger questions. And also what people have to bear in mind, when you look at it, Gambia is not a nation that consumes a lot of electricity anyway, because we don't have big industries here. It's a population of 2 million. So you even look at the Cardiff municipality, there are still many parts of it that are not electrified. So the amount of electricity we consume is really small. But how do we move forward, bearing in mind that electricity, when we talk about human development, when we talk about development, one of the key indispensable drivers is energy. No economy can grow. You cannot industrialize without energy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And here, of course, we do often put energy and petroleum together. And regarding the petroleum, we were told, not long ago, that A block 1 was given to BP. Of course, there was some controversy surrounding BP, and yet, and there are problems in Senegal. So once it was given, when they won that contract, most of us raised our eyebrows. And then we got the Transparency International report that when it comes to extractive industries and with the budgeting, we are among the least transparent countries that they surveyed. What do you make of that?
I think in terms of the petroleum sector, we're still young. We're still trying to find out whether we have it or we don't have it. And but I am happy that I think the ministry and the petroleum sector, they don't put in frameworks and mechanisms that are very progressive, that do not only calls for transparency and accountability, but they're very clear. So I think that's a welcome development, and I think the petroleum sector is still young, and people need to understand what they are doing. And having a company like BP coming in is a huge addition to the credibility of the environment, despite that they have some other cases in Senegal. So for me, in terms of the petroleum, I think they are doing quite well, and in terms of the legal frameworks that they are putting forward and all their bidding processes, it's a bit transparent. And I think if people follow through, they will see that the petroleum sector is moving ahead.
Madi,
well,
any fears given how BP were mired in these unsavory activities in Senegal, at least?
Big fears, because the Senegal scenario and other places are all cause for concern. And we have no reason to make a mistake in terms of the petroleum sector, because the evidence, the experience around the world, and Africa particularly, is huge. Whether it's Shell in Niger Delta in Nigeria, or across Angola or Congo, coming down to Senegal, to Guinea-Conakry, all of these are examples. There are multiple examples. And to look at Ghana, which came and did a lot of stuff to avoid the pitfalls of all of those countries. So we have no reason to fail. And so with all the things that mechanisms Sid mentioned that they put in place, I still think they need to go further. And because when you talk about petroleum, in terms of extractive industries, the fundamental issue is revenue, the sharing of that revenue to benefit the people. So that if you look at Nigeria and other places around Africa, that has been a problem, countries with gold, diamond, petroleum, and so on and so forth, that ultimately they have these huge deposits, but I mean, exploited by big companies from, you know, the West mainly, yet citizens remain poor. Now, how do we prevent that in the Gambia? In Sierra Leone, I think it's 2018, if I'm not mistaken, they created a law called the Extractive Industries Revenue Act, you know, to talk about, I mean, to address the revenue that will come out of the minerals that they produce in that country. Ukraine did the same thing, Extractive Industries Transparency Act, to make sure we know which companies are applying, what the terms of their contracts, even the payments they are making, and so on and so forth. We need to know these things. All right, and then you look at the issue of the revenue. Let's say the experience of, say, Sweden or Norway, sovereign funds, you know, or the Gulf states, Qatar, UAE, so that revenue that is coming there, how do we make sure this revenue does not just flow into usual government expenditures, but this is secured fund account somewhere, purposely for specific national objectives, you know, so that those funds, known as sovereign funds, would be now the funding for our development. So these are the things, and we need laws, because, you know, we don't have laws addressing that, and we need those laws at the very instance.
But,
I mean,
you know, they've promised all sorts of laws to come in regarding all
They ignored this in terms of the extractive industry. Maybe we focus on the petroleum sector, but sand mining, for instance, yes, and these are areas that are also creating this communal conflict, especially what we see in Faraba, and there are a lot of deficit in terms of the law, talking less of the revenue generated and all that. And in fact, right now, for instance, they're mining black sand in Batakunku or somewhere, and we don't even know the process. How did they get into awarding those contracts? So issues of governance require government to be transparent, to be open, for people to know that, because it's also part of managing the expectations of the people.
Of course. Now let's just move on to transport, works, and all the rest of it. I remember when we were going to Banjul to cover the address, and because it had rained earlier, then on our way there we said, wow, look at the state of the roads. This is actually the state we are in.
Yeah. So Mohammed, you see, for me, two indispensable drivers of development of the economy, electricity, energy, and roads. These, for me, are the drivers of the economy. We need electricity to electrify, to make machines work. I mean, the multiplier effect is just unlimited. And we need the roads to move goods and services and people. And Gambia, you look at these few weeks of rains. I mean, coming down here, everybody would have to use, you know, very few roads within the Cardiff municipality.
But there are many road constructions, particularly when you go to the hinterland. There's a huge work being done there, road construction all over.
Of course. Yeah, roads are being constructed, and yeah, but I'll focus maybe in the urban center here. And I think
but the government has to focus on the whole country.
Yes, of course.
You know, the North Bank, they've done what, 120 kilometers.
Of course, those are there. But also, like you know, in terms of the population size here, for instance, just take this highway going to the Combo South, for instance. You might spend 1 hour or so. What I'm trying to say is that in terms of the way we design our roads, or the way we think, I think we also we need to futuristic thinking, looking at population expansion and all that. And right now what we're facing here is basically on that. But definitely there are efforts to construct more roads, and those are commended.
Yes, and the Senegambia Bridge.
Yes,
which he opened with
absolutely.
And others. So
and
there he deserves some credit, doesn't he?
Yes.
Who deserve some credit? Those were,
you know, and this is the thing also about roads. One of the cheapest things for any government to do is to build roads, because the money is there. You know, either from your national coffers or through loans and grants, you can build roads. You know, all the roads that are here are built by grants and loans. You know, I mean, the EU or the Kuwaiti fund, the Badia, you know, Saudi fund and stuff like that. And when you look at it critically, you know, Gambia, how many kilometers of road do we need? So that the farthest point from Banjul to Koina, I mean, it's like 400 kilometers, you know? So that when you take like 2,000 kilometers of road,
that's it, but surely...
That is a lot. I mean, because practically you can, I mean, build the whole country. You know, 2,000 kilometers of road. Because it's also about not just the main highways, but it's about connecting. Like, what is the road connecting, you know, Basse or Bansang or Mansakonko or, you know, Farafenye to satellite towns and villages that are around it, where the farmers and the, you know, poor people that need to also move to grow their economy in those little localities.
But we are told that they're working on all of that. But you're also talking about the urban. What do you make of the OIC projects? There will be more road constructions and all will be built before we meet in 2022.
Well, if they build, for me, I'll be happy if I see the road expand, because I think the wastage in terms of time and also resources that you find, especially on the Senegambia highway, is crazy. People go to work late because of traffic, and yeah. So if they're expanding on that, but I also think most of these things that we're talking about, initially we thought it was going to be free money, but then we realized that it's also a loan that they're taking. So I mean, we need the roads, but also we need to be careful as to how much more money we're going to add to our debt.
That's it. And talking about OIC, I have to say one of the more startling remarks that I heard was when he said that perhaps the only setback of his government was the postponement of the OIC. Yeah. Let's just take a look at this clip. Okay, we were supposed to say that, but we all know what we were talking about.
Yeah.
We all heard it.
Yeah, we all heard it.
What did you make of that?
No, I mean, I just thought that's a joke. I mean, in other words, it's not even a setback because you still claim it will come back. And the projects that surround it are going to take place. So you go and face your nation, your people, to tell them the state of your nation over the past 12 months. And the only challenge you think you face as a government is the postponement of an international conference. I'm like, wait a minute, what's the matter with the president? You know? So all of the issues we are talking about, I mean, we're just talking about roads. The challenges governments are facing, the importance of the roads to our economy, and what obtains even, in fact, on that road. For example, the checkpoints, you know? I mean, you go to Banjul, you wonder, why do you have a checkpoint at Denton Bridge? What is the value? You'll have barriers, a police officer and a military officer will be there, you know, frantically telling vehicles, yet you put the barriers there. You still want them to rush.
Okay,
even new places...
Just hold the thought. Let's go back to the clip now.
How well we are doing within the region. On air traffic, work on the Airport Investment Project Phase 2 extension is in progress at the Banjul International Airport and will last for 18 months. The project is expected to boost the handling capacity to 500,000 passengers per annum. This is crucial as the country prepares to host the Organization of Islamic Conference, OIC, Heads of State Summit in 2022. Let me observe in passing that the postponement of the OIC summit is the only setback of the year. However, rescheduling the meeting put us in a stronger position to host it better. Related to this, the construction of the International Conference Center is progressing steadily, with 75% of the works done. Completion is scheduled for September 2019. The project has the potential to create about 1,000 jobs when completed. information and communication infrastructure, Madam Speaker.
So this is, gentlemen, so 75% of the work done. They expect to complete it September 2019. Today is the what, 21st or something? what,
19?
2019, that was what we just had.
Maybe it is done. Maybe it is done now.
So,
yeah, in terms of the International Conference Center, when you pass there, you see that it's almost ready. But what I don't understand is, like, with all the issues that are happening, that Gambians continue to confront, it seems like our government cares more about their international image than the real sufferings of the people, and I think that's not fair to Gambians.
You are right. Let's just go quickly, because we don't have that long to go, really. Lands. We know that the whole country, the land, communities have been bickering, even going violent on land. But we understand that we've initiated a national land registration system and all the reforms within lands and regional affairs ministry. We also told that there's a unified local government service commission. So there are efforts in there to deal with the situation.
Yeah, again, it's about implementation. It's good to have the policies, the laws, the institutions. That's the beginning point. And then they have to deliver. And land, I have, observed this a long time ago, that one of the flashpoints for conflicts in the Gambia would be land. The rate of land grabbing, either by then the former President Jammeh, and of course by the government itself, by estate development agencies, or agents, and by private individuals, was such that it clearly tells you, if there isn't proper management of land, not only are we going to face conflicts, but it's going to endure our ability for development, in terms of agricultural development, in terms of industrialization, in terms of other facilities that communities need. And so we have seen one of the first flashpoints since democracy came is because came as a result of land. What is on the land and what is below the land, and so it appears that is the most contentious issue, because land, is life. Land is livelihood. Land is right.
Absolutely, but we've got a land commission.
I'm not sure what is the mandate of that land commission, because I haven't seen them do much. I don't think they're in the public on the public eye, and so we don't know much about that land commission. We hear them mention, So I think there is like Madi said. Madi has just described all the scenarios that might erupt from this growing land conflict that is happening. So what would be the mandate of the land commission? Would it be to look at all these lands, or is it going to focus more on the land of the former president, or what? What we need to know about those issues.
That's it. So, but towards the end, his conclusion, he talked about people taking the law into their own hands, which quite was very true. One shouldn't take the law into your own hands. But again, there are some critics who said that he really should have also had a go, with the police, but they haven't.
Yeah, I think that is the most unfortunate part of his speech. In this moment,
and this way, please, in your answer, let's have our last word. We've really come to the end.
Yeah,
of this
right.
program.
As we stated in the beginning, the State of the Nation is an address that provides you the opportunity to bring back your country, to renew, resuscitate your country, your people, to build their confidence, to inspire them. Fears, and so for the president now to end his speech by attacking citizens, that people have taken the law into their own hands, and ignoring the factors that have generated, contributed to generating the incidents that happened, across the country, in these kinds of incidents, I think is rather unfortunate. Martin Luther King said something, that riot is the language of the unheard.
Fantastic. That's a fantastic line to end up. Now, I'm saying, Mati, your last words.
Well, like I stated in the beginning, I wasn't sure whether this was a State of the Nation or State of Government address, and I think Barrow missed a very important opportunity, like Madi said, to bring the people together. If you look at it, today Gambia is a very divided society, and Barrow, as a person, is playing a very critical role in that division. We expect him to bring people together. We expect him to unite the nation, and that's what leadership. Gambians are looking forward to a leader that can unite and move this country forward, and not a divisive leader as we have seen in the past. So I think, for me, one recommendation that I will give, I think this country needs a national conversation, and Madi keep scoring that we need a national forum where all political actors come together and then we discuss about the real issues that are happening in this country. What we've presented is not Gambia, and I'm not saying that.
Thank you very much. I'm Sid Mati, and thank you very much, Mr. Madi Jabate. We've come to the end of this special program on President Barrow's State of the Nation address, which he delivered on Thursday. Of course, we couldn't exhaust all the themes that he went through. For instance, we didn't touch women, social welfare, and all the rest of it. So in the address, there were many promises made, and he has also registered some modest achievements as well, and then we will see with the promises what happens for the next year. Thank you very much, viewers, for joining us on this special program on QTV. I am Mamadou Mbodj. Good night.